Iowa Northwestern opened last night at 29.5 as a total, which if that holds when it kicks would be a modern-day record for the lowest total. And then back to the Big 12 for a second. Sneaky Iowa State back in the race for the college, for the Big 12 championship. Iowa State all of a sudden playing possible championship football coming up later in about a month.
29.5.
That's where it opens.
It's disgusting.
If they play that game in my backyard.
Disgusting.
Klatt, it is disgusting, Klatt. 29.
That was so good. The reason I'm laughing so hard is because in the back of my mind, I was thinking to myself, gross. And then Lance just drops the disgusting.
Klatt joins us each week courtesy of MyBookie.ag. Code NEXTROUND when you sign on for that 110% sign-on bonus. MyBookie.ag, code NEXTROUND. MyBookie.ag, code NEXTROUND. They got a good one Saturday in the big noon kick. Kansas State at Texas. Hugely important Big 12 game we will discuss with Klatt coming up. But let's first rewind. If Dan Lanning had played it by the book, I think there's a chance Oregon's the number one team in the college football playoff when it's announced. They're not going to be, but they might be the best team in the country right now.
Man, I was really impressed with them. You know, I think I've told you guys this. And this is it is such a bummer. Not for the fans down there, because you guys hate me anyways, but I just lament the fact that I don't get to be around the team on game week. I get such a better feel once I can do a game, be around coaches, talk to players, because you get a sense for everything. It's not just the film, I can watch Georgia on film and be like, boy, they're really good. But you don't get a real sense for what they are. I can watch Michigan. You don't get a sense for what they are. Ohio State, same thing. And so now I've had the chance now within the last, call it 8 months, 9 months, to call Oregon's bowl game and see that iteration of Oregon, and then now see this iteration of Oregon. Oregon's freaking good, guys. They're really, really good. And I think that the difference is, and this is what people I think down in your area would probably maybe not realize, but appreciate, is the fact that Dan has built them to mirror what those teams in your all conference do. And that is big physical defensive tackles that can rotate through, stop the run, edge rushers that produce a hard edge. They're big and they're physical and they're long, hybrid style linebackers and safeties that can all run. They're tough, they're hard nosed. And then on the offensive side, they've got a really good offensive line that handled Utah. Utah's the best defense in the Pac-12 for the last 3 years. And they are that because of their defensive line. They're littered with 300-pounders up front. Here's Utah's interior right here on my board. 295, 310, 300, 310, 330. Oregon just handled them like it was no big deal. They've got the best back maybe in the country in Bucky Irving, certainly in the Pac-12. They've got playmakers on the outside. Troy Franklin is the least talked about great wide receiver in America. And Bo Nix is playing as well as he's ever played before, as efficient as anybody in the country. He can do it with his legs, makes great decisions. He's accurate. Oregon's going to win the Pac-12, and I think they're going to the playoff. And they're dangerous because they are built the correct way. Dan has built them in the image of Georgia, in the image of Alabama. And I think that's the difference from what Oregon has been, let's say, for the last 20 years, which is a really good competitive program, but one that once it got to that level struggled with the physicality of Ohio State or Auburn or, those teams in the biggest matchups on the biggest stage. That they weren't ready from a blueprint perspective. This team is ready from a blueprint perspective, and they're really good.
We just heard the soundbite from Dan Lanning on the best quarterback, in his opinion, in all of college football, of course, is his guy, Bo Nix, and I think you can make that argument. But you mentioned that offensive line. To go on the road to Rice-Eccles, and Utah did not have one sack. I just said if you gave Caleb Williams that offensive line, he was running for his life against Cal. I mean, how good would Caleb Williams be with Oregon's offensive line?
Yeah, this is where it's Bo's playing the best of anybody in the country, but it's another thing to say he's the best quarterback in the country. Not to disagree with Lanning, and I know that that's a technicality, I think we all know that like Caleb's more talented. Drake May is more talented than a Bo Nix. But Bo is playing as well as anybody in the country. That's certainly the case. And part of that is the offensive line. He's only taken 4 sacks this year. He only took 5 last year. That's 9 sacks in basically 2.5 seasons.
That was a good Saturday for you.
You ain't, bro. Hey, you ain't lying. My biggest asset as a player was I was stupid enough to be like the clown with sand in the bottom, where it's just like you could hit me as hard as you could, and I would just come right back for more, like just a moron.
I mean, that's like, Shedeur right now, but I mean, how good would Shedeur be with this offensive line?
Oh, 100%, 100%. And to your point, and this is a rebuilt offensive line. This is not like an offensive line that they all played together last year and then now it's an extension of last year. It was a rebuilt offensive line. They got the very good, probably the best lineman in the transfer portal. It's their right tackle, Johnny Cornelius, the kid from Rhode Island. And then they've supplemented it with development. They've got young players in there, sophomore, Jackson Powers Johnson, the center. He learned from last year, and Alex Forsythe, who was so good in the interior a year ago, kind of raised him in there. Yes, the offensive line is really good. They can run it, but I would say that in my estimation, protection is at least 50% quarterback play and decision-making. Part of the reason, now maybe not in Shedeur's case, when it's basically like he's not playing with an offensive line, but Bo makes great decisions really quickly, and that system gets the ball out of his hands really quickly. And Oregon's really good, guys. I thought I was as impressed with them as I was anybody, and I said on my podcast they're in the top 2 of teams I've covered this year. Them and Michigan are the 2 best teams I've covered this year. I've covered Ohio State. Ohio State is very good, but this Oregon team is different. And you're right about the Washington game because they outplayed Washington that day. You look at, like, for instance, guys, I think that we fail to realize, like, they outgained Washington in that game by over 100 yards. You kicked the field goal right before half, and this is the only decision that he and I talked about that he wanted back was the one before half. He should have taken the points. He was fine with the 4th and 3 to end the game, and candidly, I am too. What they all lament, including Will Stein, the offensive coordinator, is the play call on the 4th and 3 at the end. See, it's one thing to go for it. It's another thing to call the correct play and then execute the correct concept. Will knows that. He's really a young offensive coordinator and a good offensive coordinator. You don't roll Bo Nix to the left and cut off 3/4 of the field. He's a senior. He's not even a senior. He's like an 87-year veteran, and so you give him the full field, right? Like, he's started 55 games now. He's the most experienced player in the history of this position in our sport. You give him a full field read, including the ability to run with his legs, and if they would have done that, maybe they win that game.
Listen, I understand. We play the games for a reason. And I agree with you. I think Oregon's better than Washington. I think Texas is better than Oklahoma.
Yeah, it's a great point.
And I think Michigan is light years ahead of Ohio State. But let's give Ohio State a little love, man. That defense, they've won 4 games this year when they haven't scored more than 24 points. And that is not the Ohio State defense we'd come to know over the last couple of years. That defense is a little different right now.
Okay, so Ohio State fans, I don't know if they're like Bama fans, but man, they just like lament always. We're not this, we're not that. I can't believe, why aren't we, like, unless they're the most dominant team in history, they're just not happy. Okay. And I went through this whole exercise, on today's show. Okay, so Ohio State is number 2 in the country in scoring on one side of the ball, and number 38 in the country in scoring on the other side of the ball. Now, the last 3 years, that was understandably, like, we knew number 2 in offense, number 38 or so or worse in defense. And guess what? That didn't work, guys. It didn't work. For 3 years, they've been a quarterback-reliant, offensive-reliant team. And it didn't work. It didn't work against Michigan. It didn't work against Georgia, as close as those games were in some regard, in particular the Georgia game. And you can say, like, hey, they probably should have won Georgia. Yeah, but they didn't. They didn't because they couldn't get stops. They kept giving up big plays late in that game. And so now you flip it. They're the number 2 scoring defense in the country, number 38 scoring offense in the country. They are a defense that gets stops. They are an offense that's starting to run the ball better. Did you see how much more they controlled the line of scrimmage with Travion Henderson back and the offensive line developing than they had earlier in the year? And they're nursing along Kyle McCord, bringing him along. He'll get Ibuka back here in the next couple of weeks versus an offense that can do it all the time and nursing along a defense. My point is exactly in line with you. If you're an Ohio State fan, wouldn't you rather this equation? Because the other one didn't work and hasn't worked for 3 years. So maybe this is a better version. Even though they're not quite as dominant as what we've seen over the last few years, maybe this version is better suited to go win against Michigan. Maybe this version is better suited to go and compete in the playoff, in particular if they can get McCord to play just a little bit better, which I think that he can to some extent.
Joel Klatt is with us. He joins us each week courtesy of MyBookie.ag. Code next round. When you sign on at MyBookie.ag, get that sign-on bonus of 110% free money to play right away right there at MyBookie.ag. Code next round to get that sign-on bonus. Code next round. Saturday, Klatt will be at what could be Game 1 of the Big 12's national championship nightmare scenario. Texas, Kansas State. Texas, Klatt with a backup quarterback. Kansas State is red hot. You follow that up with Bedlam on ABC at 2:30. Texas and an Oklahoma loss pretty much wipes the Big 12 out here.
I tell you what, man, this is what's so crazy is I heard what you guys were saying right before I came on, and you're right. Like, there's Iowa State 4-1 in the conference. Like randomly, Oklahoma State 4-1 in the conference. They've found their footing. Oklahoma State is a different team than the team that got blown out by 1,000 to South Alabama. I know that's like, it's weird to say, but they are much better. They're running the ball really well, Oklahoma State. And you look at this, and you're exactly right. I'm looking at these scenarios, and I'm like, what prevents us from seeing an Oklahoma State win this week and a Kansas State win, and then seeing those two in the Big 12 championship game, which 3 weeks ago would blow our mind. Yeah. We watched Red River. Oklahoma wins. We all think like, well, we're still pretty positive about Texas, to your point. I thought that was a rematch for sure. The rest of the conference was just like, they're no good and it's not going to work out. And then here we are. And candidly, I kind of like Oklahoma State in that game. Think of the environment up there in the last Bedlam against the team that they've hated anyways and who they feel like blew up their conference, left them for dead. Oh, my gosh, guys, it's going – T-Boone, that place is going to be on fire. And we look at how Oklahoma just played last week. Plus, OU has reverted back to 2022. So last year, they did not play very good defense, which is why they were constantly in one-score games. The first 5 games of this year, it looked like that was fixed. They were giving up 11 points per game. In the last 3 games, Texas, UCF, Kansas, they're giving up 32 and about 450 yards per game. Guess what they gave up last year? 30 points, 460 yards per game. They're the exact same defense that was constantly in those one-possession games last year. 6 of them, they lost most of those games last year. Now we're seeing them in those one-possession games again. I don't love where Oklahoma is at right now. And then from a Texas perspective, I think Kansas State is the most dangerous team in the conference because of how well coached they are, the fact that they've figured out this dual quarterback system, and now Texas has got to roll out there with their backup Malik Murphy, who yes is talented, but he's a backup quarterback. Like no one wants to go out there and do that. I'm reminded a lot of last year, and this isn't even Texas A&M wasn't even as quality an opponent as K-State, but you remember when Milroe had to start for Bryce Young and the struggle that Alabama had in that game in order to beat A&M, and that it feels similar to that. Although Kansas State is certainly a better and more sound opponent than that A&M team was a year ago.
Joel, I think a lot of people forget that Kansas State is your reigning Big 12 champion based on the fact that TCU actually played for a national championship team. But Chris Kleiman, what he's got going, and I hate dual quarterbacks, but this Will Howard, Avery Johnson thing is working. You go back a month ago, they were sitting at 3-2, and they had just lost to Oklahoma State. And I was thinking to myself, because I thought they could be a dark horse to make a college football playoff run this year, I was like, damn, that's a bad loss. But when you look back, that was Ollie Gordon's coming out party. That's when Oklahoma State completely changed their offense. And now you look back, the last second loss to Missouri on the road and a one possession to Oklahoma State, those aren't bad losses now. This Kansas State team, I agree with you, super dangerous.
That's right. And at the time, we thought like, man, like, why can't you beat Missouri? Missouri's what, 7-1?
Yeah.
Man, why can't you beat Oklahoma State? Well, this is a totally different Oklahoma State team, and you're right. Ollie Gordon is on fire right now running the football. And so those look a lot different right now than what they did at the time. I've said this about the dual quarterback system. I've come around a little bit. You know, I think it's too archaic of us to just be like, can't work. Because if the two fulfill different roles within the offense, then I think it works, and it just expands what the defense has to cover and be responsible for. And I think that's in part why this is working for Kansas State.
I don't think there's a scenario where you could do this, but Florida State looks like they're on cruise control to be unbeaten in the ACC. Is there a one-loss Pac-12 or a one-loss Big 12 champion that could get left out if Georgia and Michigan are unbeaten and Florida State's unbeaten? I mean, there's no way we leave out an unbeaten Power 5 champion, right, to put in a one-loss. That may have, I mean, a one-loss Pac-12 champion would have played a tougher schedule.
Well, and remember, though, with the way that LSU has bounced back, that's going to really help Florida State. Obviously, Clemson nosediving doesn't help them at all. Man, by the way, we could do a whole show on just Clemson. Like, what in the world? But anyways, I digress. An undefeated Power 5 champ's not getting left out. That doesn't. So it becomes, let's just say, for the sake of argument, Oregon and Texas are your Pac-12 and Big 12 champs with one loss. Oregon's going to go over Texas, even with Texas's win over Alabama. And maybe it's just, and it's not even wishful thinking on my part. It's just like at some point they're going to look at that conference and say that road was just way more difficult than what Texas was going through in the Big 12, even though the Big 12 has become much tougher now with all these teams, 5 teams, 4-1 in the conference. We've known the entire season that this conference in the Pac-12 is really, really tough. It's bearing out and how tough it is to win every single week. So and maybe this is just recency bias on my part after seeing them. I don't think you can turn on the film and say that a one-loss Oregon, because it probably is a team that avenges their loss, right? That's like right. Washington probably gets back to the Pac-12 championship game, and if they were to win that one, then it's like, okay, you beat the team that beat you. We understand that you outgained them by 100 yards in their building, didn't go your way, ball bounced a little bit differently at the end than you wanted it to. Maybe I'm overthinking this with Texas's win over Alabama, but I just think Oregon would win that argument.
I agree.
All right, Klatt will be at Kansas State, Texas. Will you find a way to watch Bama LSU primetime? I don't know what your travel is after a game.
Oh,
like this.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a United guy because I grew up in Denver, and most of the planes, like, you can stream YouTube TV.
Right.
You know, you get on the internet and stream YouTube TV. So I'll be watching that for sure. I can't wait to see that one. I know
who
guys
wins?
that You don't want to ask me that.
So Klatt's on LSU.
I think LSU wins, man. Yeah. Like, I just don't know if Bama has the offensive firepower to keep up. If you tell me that Bama can hold LSU to under 32 points, then Bama's got a chance. I just don't know if they can do that. Maybe they can. You know, but
what if I told you it was 22? What if they held them under 22?
They'll win.
Yeah, I would hope.
Bama's going to score. I think Bama's going to score between 24 and 28 points. And so, like, now it's on the defense, and you've got to find a way to keep that. I mean, that offense is it's really good, guys. It's really good. Their defense is terrible, obviously, but Daniels is playing really well, and I'm a big fan. I mean, Neighbors is really. So this is a better offense than Texas. Let's just put it that way.
How does Daniel stay healthy?
I don't know. How does Shedeur Sanders stay healthy? I don't get it.
That was hard to watch, man. That was hard to watch.
Yeah, that was hard to watch. And everyone's like, Dion can't say that about an O-line. Really? Really?
And it's made worse that it's his son. I don't know if he would deny that or not, but as a father, watching your son take that beating is even more intense than watching a quarterback take that beating.
We started this off with Lance just saying the word disgusting.
Yeah.
Different subject. The Colorado offensive line is disgusting.
It is.
I watch them on film. Their schematics, their effort. It's disgusting.
Yeah. I mean, literally, I was watching that game, and if it was boxing, they would have stepped in.
No doubt.
And stopped the fight.
Yeah.
They would have stopped the fight. The game was close, but he was taking a beating.
Yep.
They would have stopped the fight.
Yep.
Yeah, the two guards, both the guards for Colorado should be, just like embarrassed. Just so embarrassed. Like, I don't understand how you don't have more pride than that. Bite somebody, hold somebody, chop them, do something.
Ball down and trip them.
Yes, like leg whip them. Force them to throw the flag. I mean, just the amount of Olays, they're bullfighting in there, and it's just disgusting.
All right, he is Joel Klatt. You will see him on the Big Noon Kick, Kansas State at Texas, 11 o'clock Fox on Saturday. He's with us each week, courtesy of MyBookie.ag. Thank you very much, Klatt.
Appreciate you guys. Have a good day.
All right, buddy. You too. Take care. Klatt with us. As I said, courtesy of MyBookie.ag. Still, code next round for that 110% sign-on bonus at MyBookie.ag. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie.ag.